All right, so we'll start with the exposition of creation and fall. So this is kind of the first plot point in Freytag's pyramid here, creation and fall. And so we'll begin with the creation. He says that the greatest historical drama begins with creation. The opening verse of Genesis is ripe, he tells us, with the exposition of the story, setting up the conditions under which the conflict will arise. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, Genesis 1:1, right? And one of the first things he wants us to notice here is that the universe does not, notice, emerge out of something, but out of someone, right. A person, right?
He sets the stage. Who's the actor? God. Okay, and then what does he do? He builds the set.
Right.
Wait, hold on. We're supposed to get the setting first, right? Yes. He's setting it up. Right. It's just taking a minute. And starting on page 262 of the hardcover is where we're covering this. The way he lays this out, I think, is just phenomenal. He does such a good job of storytelling, a story that we know well. Oh yeah, and it's very well done. I highly suggest clicking the links in the book, picking the book up, and starting in 262 on the hardcover, just reading the description of the story of the Bible, told in this kind of story form that's familiar, but also just neat to see in this format.
Right, and he does. Yeah, you're right. He does a good job of telling the story. Here,
the constituent elements of all created reality, concisely managed in one verse. The indicative that God has eternally existed, irrespective of the advent of time, the beginning, as well as space and matter, the heavens and the earth. Is that everything? That's pretty much everything. Yeah. The implication is that while the creation has its beginning in God, God has no beginning. We're not told about the birth of Zeus in this story. Right. There's no ether that the gods exist in. Furthermore, he is no idol God of deism, but the living, active, and sustaining Lord of all.
Right. So he just didn't create and then walk away. No, he's part of the deal. He's interacting with it. He's sustaining it, keeping it, that
molding
kind
it,
of stuff.
Looking at it, creating out of it.
Yeah. So while God is the center of the story, man, he tells us, is central to God's unfolding plan. He's, a supporting character, we might say. Thus, God places the man Adam and his wife Eve in the garden, Genesis 2:8, and which is a divine sanctuary, he tells us, of delights, in order that his personal presence, that is God's personal presence, might be manifested to them in a place marked by perfect harmony and fellowship. Right, so there it is, Eden. And they have been commissioned, he tells us, to Edenize the entire creation, right? To make all of creation like Eden.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
And so, if we're looking at the script, you're given a script to the play. Well, we are starting with the author. He's constructing the set, and you get to day 6, and here are the actors. Here are the people. But also the
supporting cast.
The author and director of the story comes in and introduces us. Well, it's the narrator enters and talks about it. Call me Ishmael, call me Yahweh. So he comes in. So while God is the center of the story,
So anyway, practically speaking, he tells us that this Edenizing means that humanity has been tasked with a cultural mandate.
Yeah,
right.
It's the goal. It's what they're supposed to do. It's what the Jews are supposed to do. It's what Christ is doing. It's what the church is supposed to do as well. And it's what ultimately will be done in the end.
Right. And so they're supposed to, pursue this intellectually, technologically, aesthetically, and socially to establish this civilization of a God-drenched wonder, right? As he says, Edenize the entire creation, right?
Yeah, pretty neat to kind of think about that.
Yeah.
Throughout the account, every aspect of this creation is pronounced good. Everything material and immaterial is very good. Genesis 1:31. Beautiful, without blemish, the way things ought to be. God is the sum and substance of goodness, Psalm 100, verse 5. Therefore, he cannot make anything bad. In the light of God's glorious goodness, his creatures can bask in the fullness of joy with pleasures forevermore, flowing from the palm of his hand. There is no longing, no anxiety, no dissatisfaction, no sin, no death. All is right with the world. But this paradise is soon to be lost. Right. Its glory dissipated.
Wow. So you have this beautiful picture here. And, of course, it's about to fall.
Yeah. If I was rich, everything would be perfect.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, until it falls.
That's right.
So he says Genesis wastes no time in introducing the central conflict of the story. The sunny warmth of the garden is immediately overshadowed by dark, billowy, fast-churning storm clouds, right? The order, the beauty, the peace, the harmony described in Genesis 1 and 2 comes quickly crashing down, he tells us. This all comes by way of meeting the main villain of the story, the crafty serpent, better known in Revelation 22 as Satan.
Yeah,
right.
The Snidely Whiplash. He comes in with twirling his mustache. This is him.
Right, and so just as the Bible portrays God without a hint of evil, the Bible portrays Satan without a hint of goodness. Right. Satan seeks to subvert the whole order of creation and derail humanity's task of glorifying God in the establishment of a holy kingdom. Right, so evil. There it is. Right. Personification.
And there's no fall story with him. He just comes into the story.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Eve's heart is captured. Her response shows no enthusiasm for the truth.
Wow.
Well, yes, we can eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. Missing from her answer is that any tree is to be freely eaten except for one. Why that one? Why not all the other ones you could possibly? Out of all the cookies you could possibly have, child, you're reaching up to the one on top that is mom and dad's cookies. Just leave it alone. Adam and Eve doubt God's goodness and wisdom, and this leads to disbelief in his integrity. They convince themselves that he has lied to them, that God has lied to him. You shall not surely die, the serpent rejoins. The first doctrine to be denied, according to the Bible, is the doctrine of judgment. If you can get rid of that one teaching, then rebellion has no adverse consequences, and you are free to do anything.
Yeah, that is a really interesting observation, right? The first doctrine to be denied is that you're going to be judged.
Right.
Right?
You shall not surely
die. That's right. And, of course, from there, as he mentions, well, if there's no consequences for anything that I do, I can do anything I want. Yeah. I'm free, right? Yeah. And so, he says, and what wonders come into view as the eyes of both were open? None.
Yeah, I like this part.
No power, no pleasure, no freedom, no feeling like God euphoria, right?
You shall become as gods. Okay, I've eaten from it. Oh, man, what did we do?
A sudden realization of ugliness, of nakedness, of shame, of disillusion, right? So instead of power, there's vulnerability and helplessness. Instead of pleasure, there's pain and suffering. Instead of freedom, there's bondage, right? Instead of feeling like God, he tells us, there's this searing reality of frail creatureness. And paradise is lost, right?
Yeah. So everything that was promised, the opposite happens. So the conflict of the story is sealed by the divine curses that inexorably fall upon the man, his wife, and their progeny. They bring ruin and death on themselves and the creation. It's not just this affects man, but this affects all creation. It stems out from man and goes to the entire world. Death means separation. Physical death separates one's immaterial soul from the material body. But this isn't the worst of it. In its darkness dimension, death is alienation from the life of God. So that's what will be experienced.
Right, and that's what spiritual death is all about.
This is what it is.
So death is separation, physical death for the soul from the body. Spiritual death, you shall die, is this alienation, this separation from God, right?
Right, and there are a lot of implications here, a lot of disagreement on first death, second death, but ultimately that's what it is. It's alienation from God. There's a reason that when we get to the redemption part of the story, this is so important. And it is here that the historicity of Adam and the fall is critical. Without a historical Adam and fall, doubt is also cast on the rest of the biblical storyline's resolution to the central crisis of humanity.
Right. So all the rest of the Bible revolves around this fall of Adam, right? And so if you take that away, well, then the whole, what's going on? It's not, the whole thing kind of is cast in doubt, as he tells us, right?
Yeah. That's the made up story. And so here's walking along with Jesus. He dies on the cross. He rises again, and people's calls him God and the Redeemer of their sins. Well, what redemption from what? Yeah. Well, that old story from back in the day
that really didn't happen.
There are implications to it, and even Christ talked about the belief in Adam and Eve being real and existent.